Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, it has been an incredibly difficult and turbulent 18 months for just about every individual employee and every industry. And I'm fascinated by the amount of businesses and individuals who have been able to reinvent themselves or explore new ways of doing what they do. And today's guest was used to flying around the world performing keynotes to huge audiences. But we all know what happened next. The event industry went dark. But today's guest calls himself the digital speaker, and he can now perform keynotes as an avatar, hologram, a combination of both, or indeed in person. And not only that, he can do it in many, many different languages by leveraging technology. And he is an expert on emerging technologies such as big data analytics, blockchain, tokenization, and AI, not to mention the founder of Datafloq and Mavin and a founding board member of the Two Tokens Foundation. And if that's not enough, he's the best-selling author of 3 management books, including his latest book, The Organization of Tomorrow. But he has a great story to share, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to The Hague in the Netherlands, and I'm going to introduce you to the man they call the digital speaker. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mark. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Neil. It's a pleasure being here. So I am Mark van Rijmenam. I'm the founder of Datafloq, which is a content platform around emerging technologies. I'm also the founder of Mavin, which is a platform where we try to build a reputation protocol to fight misinformation, bad bots, and online trolls, which we believe is very much necessary. I'm doing research on how emerging technologies are changing organizations. So I call myself a future tech strategist. And until the corona, I would fly around the world helping organizations with their digital transformation, which obviously stopped quite abruptly in March 2020. But then I decided to practice what I preach and to digitize myself. So I've created a concept called the digital speaker, and you can book me now as an avatar or as a hologram, and which is a fantastic metaphor for organizations. So if I can become digital, then any organization should become digital. That is very much fun to do. It's all recorded in VR and shared online, and I really enjoy doing that. That's about it. Oh yeah, and I wrote 3 books on these topics as well. So.
It's incredibly cool what you're doing, and I will post some videos on the show notes just so people can see what you've created here. And I always say on the podcast that technology works best when it brings people together. And yes, you are a future tech strategist, but one of the things that really put you on my radar was how you think about technologies and how they're changing business and society. But I've got to ask, I'd love to take you back to where it all began. What is your origin story? What is it that put you on this path, and where did your passion for technology come from?
That's a very good question, and it actually started quite some time ago. In a long time ago, I worked in hospitality, and that's so I took up quite of a different path from there on. But it started about a decade ago, where I did a really cool adventure with a friend of mine. We circumnavigated Australia on a push bike in 100 days for charity, which was an absolutely amazing experience to do. And I can definitely recommend anyone to do such an adventure, because it gives you the possibility to free up your mind completely and to really enjoy life in its simple form, which is a fantastic experience. But then afterwards, when we came back, obviously I didn't want to work for a boss anymore, so I decided to start my own company, which I have to say I miserably failed after half a year. So I had to get a job, didn't like it, got myself fired, and started again. And that's sort of where the adventure started, because I decided to do something with big data, which is a very broad concept, but I didn't have any understanding of big data. So I taught myself what it was all about, and I shared that knowledge online. And crazy enough, within a month and a half, I was invited to speak at a conference as the expert on big data, which obviously was crazy, and it showed as well that in the land of the blind, the one eye is king, and it was a fantastic experience. But that's sort of where it all started, and from there on, I took a deep dive into big data. I wrote my first book called Think Bigger, and a couple of years later, I got the opportunity to do a PhD at the University of Technology in Sydney. They gave me a few scholarships, which allowed me to do that. And during my PhD, I came into contact with blockchain and AI. So after half a year, I decided to completely, change direction with my PhD and focus on these three topics. Because for me, these are sort of the holy grails into the organization of tomorrow. And I wanted to learn more about these technologies and how these technologies are impacting organizations. And yeah, that's sort of how I came into this tech path. And it's been a crazy journey. I absolutely love it. I find anything that's has something to do with emerging tech or future tech fascinating. There's so much happening in this space, and I always say we live in exponential times, but I truly believe that, because the convergence of these technologies, they will have such a massive impact on our society, and I love to help people understand how big this impact will be, but also what the consequences of these exponential technologies will be for for us as citizens, for us as organizations and our society, to create a way that we can use these technologies in a way that is good, and not in a way that it's bad.
And of course, from there, you ended up flying all over the world, delivering keynotes, and we all know what happened next. And one of the things that really interests me is how some individuals, including yourself here, have been able to evolve and adapt to how the world has changed over the last 18 months. And like you said a few moments ago, you now perform keynotes as an avatar, hologram, or a combination of both, or even in person. Can you tell me more about that and the technology that enables you to bring these keynotes to life in a digital way?
Sure, of course, and it's a great, again, a new adventure, and I've just started exploring it, and I've been working for a little bit less than a year now on these technologies, and it's fantastic. It's fascinating. There's so much possible when you start performing in virtual reality. And as I mentioned, it's a great metaphor for my talk, because I always tell organizations, digital transformation, when you are a data organization, it comes with so many benefits and opportunities, and that's what I experience now myself as well. As an avatar, I can talk at multiple locations live around the world. I can literally speak anywhere on this world or off this world, because in virtual reality, I can create any studio, obviously, and I can perform on the moon if need be. And that's, of course, a very cool thing as well. And it also enables you to scale much bigger, because now all of a sudden my avatar can speak any language. I can speak Mandarin if I can clone my voice with AI, can speak Arabic or Spanish or French, whatsoever. And so it really shows you the possibilities that you get when you are digitally transforming your organization. And if I, as a small entrepreneur, can do this, any organization should be able to do this. So it is recorded in virtual reality, and I want to be able to move to a situation where it's fully live, fully immersive. And at the moment, I'm also recording this concept called the Digital Speaker Series, where it's either a tech journal where I share the latest digital news from literally inside the digital world, where I share some thought leadership, or where I interview guests who have a lot of knowledge on digital transformation. And the combination of this as an experience and also as an experiment, because at the moment these videos are available in 2D, and I want to move, of course, towards where they are available in 360 degrees or virtual reality, where people can join me live from anywhere in the world in virtual reality, and then of course we can do really cool stuff together.
And I'm suspecting that we're going to have a lot of keynote speakers that are listening all over the world thinking that is absolutely a genius idea. And if they wanted to follow in your footsteps, how are you doing this? Is there anything you can share about the technology that has enabled you to do this?
Sure. So we've created my own studio in virtual reality. We have created my avatar, and once you build it onto your headset, in this case an Oculus, and then we can start recording it. And of course, I also have sensors on my body, so that we can track my movements. We can track my mouth, so that it's very much aligned with what I'm saying. And that's where we start. And from there on, you can see that the advancements in technology in VR are going really, really fast. Of course, we have the Oculus 2, we have the HoloLens 2 coming, or already there. Recently, I saw a fantastic concept from Microsoft called Microsoft Mesh, where they sort of showed their vision for the future when it comes to augmented reality and virtual reality. And I certainly believe in that. And the combination of being able to record in VR, live streaming from VR. I actually gave the first TEDx talk in virtual reality in the world a couple of months ago, and yeah, it's we are really at the starting point of this, but there's so much possible in the coming years, and I'm super excited about it.
And what kind of feedback have you received from those virtual experiences, especially when you're talking about the TED Talk there? How was that received?
Yeah, very well. People, it's so innovative, and it's something different. And we are obviously, after a year and a half doing Zoom calls, we are sort of done with Zoom calls, and it's great to be able to do something different. And you see a lot more people now exploring virtual reality as well already. And I think it is definitely the future, VR or even mixed reality when we combine VR and AR. And the feedback, it's really great. People love it, and it's especially because it is something new. And then, my story that I try to tell very much aligns with, the way I present it. And that, of course, resonates very well.
And as for your other work here in 2021, you must be seeing a lot of different tech trends. How do you see the future of work evolving? There is a lot of talk about hybrid approach now, but what trends are you seeing?
So I think the hybrid work is something that's definitely where we're heading to. The rise of the digital employee who can literally work from anywhere is here to stay. And I think this is very much involves around how I see the future of work, which I think is it revolves around three concepts: data, decentralization, and automation. And I think any organization has to be able to incorporate these three concepts within their business in order to be ready for the future of work. And I've read it quite a few times online. That in the past year and a half we've seen digital transformation. That would have taken about a decade. Pressed into a year and a half, which I think is I'm really happy about that, because a lot of organizations really had to catch up on how we work. But so if we look at the future of work and the three concepts, first of all, data. Data is, of course, it's the most important resource for the next century, and it's something that we that's a different concept that we can talk a little bit about later. But I foresee very much a struggle around who owns data and who controls data. But it's for organizations, if you do it in the correct way, if you do it in a private, secure, and ethical way, data, of course, has tremendous opportunity for your organization to sense what's happening in your environment, to seize those opportunities that are happening, and then to transform your organization accordingly, which will have a direct impact on how leadership will evolve in the years to come as well, because data really will empower employees and customers to make the right decisions at the right moment for the right stakeholders. So that's the data part. If we then look at the decentralization part, what for me, I think blockchain or distributed ledger technology is a fundamental technology that is really rewriting the rules of society. Yes, we're still early stage in the development. I still think we are. You can compare it to the 70 98, 99 of when the internet was developed. But we are getting there, and the developments are going incredibly fast. fast. And I see that the blockchains will be the golden standard for supply chains. We'll see the whole rise of DeFi, decentralized finance, where we're completely rewriting all these financial services, and we can take out the middleman and completely creating new organizations, more effective, more efficient, that are hopefully there for the citizens. Data sharing becomes more possible. Data ownership. You can really control your own data. So decentralization is going to be a crucial a crucial concept of the future of work. And of course, the third component is automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, where we can use AI to not only make organizations more effective and efficient, but also make organizations more humane. Because a lot of the mundane tasks, a lot of the tasks can be taken over by algorithms, allowing the employees to be able to spend more time on the customer and to deliver the best service, and to create really stakeholder value instead of shareholder value. And I think that has a lot of potential. Although we do have to be careful, because with AI also comes with great responsibilities. And there, for those who have seen the movie Coded Bias, shows that artificial intelligence is being created by biased developers and trained by biased data. So we really have to be careful that we do this in an ethical way, not to cause any problems for anyone. So, to summarize, I think the future of work is very, very exciting, and I think these three concepts: data, decentralization, and automation, are going to be crucial for any organization if they want to remain competitive in the years to come.
Now, a guest recently told me that tomorrow every business is going to have more data than they have today, and every organisation is now a data organisation. So I'm curious, how do you see that evolving, and especially with the 5G and IoT, it's only going to exacerbate that problem more. But how are you seeing it evolve, and how can companies begin to prepare for that future today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think I completely agree that every organization is a data organization. And in fact, every industry is a data network, I would say. And we see that the amount of data that's being created will explode in the coming years. With all those sensors, all those connected devices, all those robotics everywhere in our society. I believe we have about 10-20 billion connected devices at the moment, but they expect that we have about 100 trillion connected sensors in the next decade, and these are creating vast amounts of data that we need to be able to handle, and data will not only become more, it will also become a lot more granular, more detailed. We will be able to find patterns and insights everywhere. And that, of course, immediately brings the question of how do we deal with all this data from a privacy perspective? Because if we have so much data at hand, and we have really complex, advanced algorithms, which are also black boxes, how do we deal with that? And I think organizations that want to prepare for that future, they should really look at data from a how can we do this in the most private, secure, and ethical way? Because if we don't do that, we're going the way like Facebook is going, and I think we should avoid at all times a society that is run by companies such as Facebook. I've recently came up with the story where I believe liberalism is slowly being replaced by a new global political doctrine, which I call digitalism, and digitalism is really about the struggle for data and who controls data, and it's either the state who controls the data, it's either the corporate world who controls the data, or it's the citizen who controls the data, and depending on which direction you are going, if it's the state controlling the data, we go into a situation like China, where state surveillance, full accountability, no privacy, and that's I think a very scary direction to go. If we go in the direction of corporate corporate surveillance, where the corporates control all the data. We go into the direction what's happening now in America, where the big tech giants, they have all the data and they have full control, and they can switch off your voice if they want to. They understand better who you are and what you want than you do yourself, and they have full power. They have so much lobbying power that they control the legislation, and I don't think that's a good direction either. And then the final stream is where we as citizens control the data, where we use technology to empower us as citizens to use it in the most optimal way for society. And that's sort of what I see happening in Europe with the GDPR, with the AI guidelines that were released a couple of years ago, with the AI risk-based approach that was released a couple of weeks ago, and where we are really trying to use data for the benefit of society, for the benefit of the people. But it's for me, if I would say recommend to organizations, look at your organization of how can you incorporate data, how can you use and make use of data and benefit from data, but how can you do so in the most private, secure, and ethical way? Because I think that's going to be key in the years to come.
And something else I also read about here, and I'd love for you to share this, is how you think AI will actually make companies more humane, but also why we should be careful when implementing AI too. And for anyone that's not a follower of your work and hearing about you for the first time, could you share a little on that too?
Yeah, sure. In the recent years, I've been really changed my perspective from about a decade ago, and where a decade ago I said to organizations, you need to collect as much data as possible, create this 360 degrees customer profile, and store as much data so that you can really recommend the best things to your customers. And while I still see, the very much the importance of data collection, I now stress a lot more the importance of doing this in a secure, private, and ethical way. And there are too many examples of companies where they've been hacked, and the data of their customers is on the streets, and passwords, credit card details, personal identifiable information. So that is something that is has become only more important for organizations. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations are not paying attention to this at all. There are so many examples of organizations where, especially with connected devices, where the security is just, really, really horrible. And that is something that is, I think, very, very problematic. And I've seen figures that they expect cybercrime to cost the world about between $5 and $10 trillion per year in 2025. So it's very problematic. And I've been really trying to focus more on how can we now start using these technologies for in a good way. Because in the end, technology is neutral. We can just like any technology is neutral. We can use a hammer to build a house, or we can use a hammer to hurt someone. And the same applies to AI. We can use AI to make the world a little bit a better place, or we can use AI to create a society which is more divided, or more unfair. So I think that is very problematic, and I think a lot of organizations are not there yet to see the importance and the responsibility that comes with collecting all that data. So to go back to your question of making, how can AI make organizations more humane, and I think that is really because of course AI can take over a lot of the mundane tasks, and let's take an example in the call center. The very simple questions, I've lost my password, or I need to change an appointment, or whatsoever. Those can easily be done with AI, so that the call center agents can then focus on the more complex questions and really deliver a customer service. And it's my vision that we should move away from a shareholder first approach, and we should really move to a stakeholder first approach. And if you take care of your customers eventually will take care of your shareholders. Because if you're doing a good job, then you will make revenue, and people will like what you're doing. But we need to move towards a more stakeholder approach, where we don't only look at the shareholders, but we also look at your employees, at your customers, at the environment, at being sustainable, etc. And technology can help there. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to share, is how can we help organizations use the technology in a way that's good for everyone.
And I'm curious, how do you think leadership will change? Because we're already seeing a different form of leadership that is required for leading a distributed workforce that could be located anywhere. But do you see that role of leadership continuing to change?
Yes, I definitely think so. And I think leadership will move more and more into a way of coaching or guiding, an organization into the right direction. Especially when you have the organization of tomorrow, where your employees will have all the data to make the right decisions. And I think we're moving towards that, where those employees who are facing the customers, they should be fully empowered. They should have all the data to make the right decisions. So decision making is moving away from the leadership more towards those employees facing the customer. And then I think it will be the job of the leadership to focus on empowering those employees, giving them the access to the data in a secure and private way, and guiding them to use that data correctly. So I think leadership, to me, is going to be focusing more and more on how can you guide your employees in the right direction. Of course, still having the strategic decisions and strategic directions to be made, by the leadership, because eventually I think that's something that leadership can do. Having this long-term approach of where do we want to go to as a company, and how will we enable our employees to reach that? And I think that's where leadership will change towards in the coming years.
For any IT teams listening, IT directors or techies, do you see the role of IT changing, especially with, shadow IT dominating the workplace, where almost any department can get something from the cloud without even talking to the IT department? So how do you see the role of IT changing?
Well, I think the role of IT will become more important, especially if organizations want to stay competitive in this fast-paced, data-driven environment that we live in. This requires flexibility, and this requires space for innovation. And I think that's where the IT department comes in. And they should be an educator for the rest of the business, bringing agile methods, working methods, bringing data governance best practices, bringing digital innovation to the rest of the business. So I think the IT department should become this dynamic capability that really can differentiate your business from your competitors. And I truly believe that IT can make a difference if you develop it in the right way. So I think if we look at the IT department of the future, your CIO should own the innovation within the business, and they should be able to establish the right IT capabilities that offer this competitive advantage for everyone within the organization. And I think this requires CIOs to take up the leadership when it comes to innovation, and helping other departments, making aware of the digital possibilities that these emerging tech are offering nowadays.
And a question that I always like to ask my guests is if there was a particular song or piece of music that has inspired them in their career. And we started this podcast today with your origin story, so I'd love to know what gets you in the zone before going on stage and delivering one of those keynotes, or just something that you play a lot and reminds you of your career in tech. Is there a particular song?
Yes, I had to think about it, because I really enjoy listening to music, but I'm horrible at remembering songs titles and so that was a bit of a challenge. But I did have a think, and the song that came to my mind was "Sugar Man" from Rodriguez. I'm not sure if you know this. I came across Rodriguez, I think about 8 or 9 years ago, from the documentary "Searching for Sugar Man," and I think the story of this artist is amazing, and I can really recommend the listeners to look it up, this documentary, because it's a fascinating story. This artist had faded in obscurity from the 70s, but there were some, he was extremely popular in South Africa. And there were all kinds of myths around this singer that he had killed himself by putting himself on fire on stage, and those crazy stories. And then two fans started a quest to find him, and eventually they did find him, and they brought him over to perform in this stadium for 50,000 people while he was living on the streets, I think in Chicago, so I'm not sure. And now I think he's still a famous singer. He still performs, and this song is, especially this song, it's a bit psychedelic, I think, but the music is, and especially the story is fantastic. fantastic. I really love listening to his music.
Oh man, that was a great story behind that as well. I remember the documentary well, and I saw him perform. I think it was at Glastonbury. It was around about that kind of time, shortly after the documentary, and it really is worth checking out. But finally, before I let you go, for anyone that would like to find out more information, how they can book you or see the kind of work that you're doing and that TED Talk, what's the best starting point to finding out more about you?
Well, I'm pretty visible online, but I would say you can find me on Twitter, which is at Van Rijmenam, which is, if you're not Dutch, a very difficult Twitter handle. But you can find me. The easiest way to find me is to go to thedigitalspeaker.com, where you can find all my information on my avatar, on my hologram. You can also go to vimeo.com/digitalspeaker, where you can see the various episodes that I've been recording and being put online. And again, of course, also on LinkedIn or on via Datafloq, or as I said, I'm pretty visible online.
Excellent. And I'll add a couple of the links to those videos there, because how you're performing these keynotes with avatars and holograms is incredibly cool. And you just feel so ahead of your time for me. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to sit down and share your story with me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Neil. It's been a great pleasure to be on your show.
What a great story. And I love how he's using technology to deliver his keynotes. And I also love chatting about how technologies are changing businesses and indeed society, and just love discussing the future of work, how every organisation is a data organisation, and how AI will make companies more humane. But we should be careful when implementing AI, as AI is being created by biased people who are trained with biased data. But that's something we could talk about for much, much longer than one episode of this podcast. So enough from me. Let me know your thoughts, takeaways, questions, or pictures to come on this podcast by simply emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 1,600 interviews and also links to the other podcasts I host with Citrix and Netgear. But that's it for today's episode, so all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.